Hey everybody, I'm excited to welcome you today with a great motivational conversation with one of the best, if not the best, motivation experts and a good friend of mine, Jim Cathcart. Jim has got over 22 published books. He's been a National Hall of Fame speaker. He's been recognized as one of the top 50 most influential people in the world of sales and marketing. And today I got a chance to just pull him aside out of his busy schedule and to just kind of lob toss some questions about how to get motivated, how to continue to develop habits that create the life that we desire. So Jim, thanks so much for taking some time to have a chat today.
Hey, it's always good to be with you, David.
Well, give us a little bit of background as to how you've developed your expertise in helping people to get motivated and to create the life that they desire.
Well, I've been a professional speaker and author for 43 years now, and it all started when my life was meaningless in the overall scheme of things, and I wanted to make a difference in the world, and I didn't know how, and I didn't have any assets to start with other than just living in a free country and having good health. And, I didn't have any money, connections, any college degree or anything like that. I was working as a clerk at a government office, and I wanted to make a difference, but I didn't think I could. And I heard an inspiring message like the ones that you deliver from Earl Nightingale on the radio one day, and that was the turning point. And I started changing my thought habits, which changed my behavior habits, which changed my reputation among coworkers and others, which changed my relationships and expanded my world, and my future got bigger. And since that day, I've delivered 3,300 paid engagements, speeches and seminars, literally all over the world, been around the world 3 separate times, spoke 21 different cities in China over the last 5 years. Last year, I spent 71 days in China doing lecture tours, and no, I didn't contract coronavirus, thank God. But I did have a wonderful experience. And now, like everybody, I'm at home in this COVID era of quarantine, self-quarantine, and we're all looking, where do we go next? But I think where we ought to go next is right here. We ought to start looking, since we've got some extra time on our hands and we've got an uncertain situation. We don't know how long this is going to last or what the next step's going to be. Let's consider this an opportunity to rethink the way we think. Because when the way we think shifts, the way we behave shifts, because it changes our choices day to day, moment to moment. And that starts changing your life. It starts with mindset, then it goes to actions. Actions lead to habits. Habits lead to your reputation. And that determines which relationships are open to you. And that determines how big or small your future could be. So dream about the future you want and start backing up from there. If that's the future of my dreams, who needs to know and admire me and accept me as part of their circle? Okay. What kind of reputation do I need to get those people to open their minds to the idea of dealing with me? Okay. To get that reputation, which habits are essential to my life? Work habits, personal habits, communication habits. And those habits come from which actions? Repeated. Okay. How do I get those actions? Mindset. So what do I need to be doing in my thinking every day to change the way my future turns out? As you know, David, years ago, I was fat. I weighed 200 pounds. Today, I weigh 141 and a half. I mean, oh my gosh, big difference between then and now. Well, at that time, I thought like a person who was fat. I considered myself overweight, not fat in the big sense, morbidly obese, but I considered myself to be a normally overweight guy. I did not consider myself to be an athlete, and I wasn't. So I did all the things that a person who's not particularly fit would do. You know, I smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day. I didn't exercise. I ate unhealthy food. I was lethargic in the evenings, just sitting around watching TV, you know. So my life was exactly what you'd expect from that kind of thinking. And then I decided one day, because I'd been many times, I'd been on successful diets and lost weight. Of course, always gained it back. I thought, you know what I need to do is stop dieting and become a slender person. Well, I had been temporarily a slender person many times over the years, but it never stuck because I didn't think like a slender person and my life didn't reflect that. So I said, how do slender people think about their life, their world, their eating, their day-to-day routines, their public image? How do they think about themselves differently than heavy people? And when I started discovering what those differences were, I started making the changes. And some changes were difficult and some were just organic. Didn't even have to think about them. It's like this recent, I recently took off 14 pounds just because my wife and I did a protein cleanse a month and a half ago. And we decided to shift to a plant-based diet primarily. And in doing so, the weight just kind of dripped away. I never had to have a day that I felt I was dieting. And now I'm at probably, you know, the set point where I naturally ought to be, who knows. But I certainly feel good, and I'm running and exercising and all that, working just fine. And my latest physical said, "You're correct, Jim, you're healthy."
Well, let's talk about that for just a moment,
Yeah.
because I know that there's a lot of people, Jim, that kind of use age as an excuse, as, you know, they don't think that they can get healthier. They're just, you know, as they've gotten older, their metabolism slowed down. So they've kind of given up hope. They've given up on the idea that they could be optimally healthy. And you do
Yeah.
some things now that, you know, young 20-year-olds can't do. So maybe talk a little bit more about how age has not defined
Okay.
your ability to live life at the highest.
Well, I was 30 years old before it occurred to me that getting into good shape would be a great idea. And that's when I went from 200 down to 148, and then stayed within 10 or 15 pounds of that over all the years in between. But in all the years in between, I dedicated myself to fitness. Well, that kind of ebbed and flowed over time. And some years I would be very fit, and some years not particularly, but always reasonably fit. Well, about age 62, I decided to go for it and to push the envelope and see what kind of personal best I could hit. And I got out on the hiking trails, running and hiking in the mountains here near Los Angeles. And I was going 3 times a week, which I'm still doing. I've been doing for 18 years, nonstop, 3 days every week at sunrise, 6 miles each time. And I really started going for it. And man, I mean, I was ripped in a matter of several weeks. You know, at first I just, my lungs burned and my muscles ached and all that. And I had plantar fasciitis and other typical foot problems that somebody would incur. And then I figured out how to run better. I got some orthotics that made it easier on my feet. Those problems went away. My cardiovascular system was working better, so I wasn't getting the lung burning or the muscle aches. And at age 62, I set 27 personal bests that year. 27 times I exceeded my previous best ever. And then one day I was running on the mountain trail and I fainted. And I got up, you know, instantly after fainting. And I thought, well, what was that about? And one of my friends who's a doctor said, you really ought to go get checked out. And I did. And they said, boy, you're in good shape. And I said, no, I didn't come in to find out if I'm in good shape. I know that. I want to know why I fainted. They said, no, not sure. You know, maybe it's a left bundle branch block. I said, I've got a blockage in my heart. And they said, well, not a blood blockage. You know, you don't have to have a bypass or anything. But a left bundle branch is a branch of a bundle of nerves that's in your heart. And there's a left bundle, a right bundle, and your left bundle sometimes seems to be working fine and sometimes not. So there's at least an occasional blockage in the electrical impulses inside your heart. I said, so what do I do to make it better? Because I was willing, you know, didn't care how much it hurt, how long it would take. I was willing to go the distance and endure the pain. They said, well, you can't do anything. I said, oh, come on, there's got to be something, you know, eat only two-toed sloths for a month, or, you know, climb trees 5 times a day. I mean, give me something, you know, graze on grass, anything. I don't care if it's bizarre or hard, just tell me. They said, Jim, there's no cure for a nerve blockage in the heart. All we can do is put in a pacemaker. I said, get away. You know, stand back. No way you're going to put a device in my heart and then put a tube up my nose and have me walking around in a walker. They said, oh, no. With a pacemaker, you can run marathons. I said, are you serious? They said, oh yeah, weightlifters, marathon, triathletes have pacemakers. Really? I said, well, I'm not ready for that. So I put it off for months. And finally, I kept getting more and more frequency of that feeling like I would get dizzy if I pushed it. So I went back to the doctor and they said, you ready? I said, yeah. So they put it in on October 25th, 2016. And 2016. I wanted to get the date right. And they sent me home the next day. Now it's major surgery, it's heart surgery. But I went in the hospital one morning, and the next morning at the end of like 11 o'clock, they sent me home. So it was in there and it was time for me to go on about my business. So I went home, took a nap, got up, took a shower, covering the bandages, of course, and then put on a tuxedo and emceed a banquet with 500 people that evening until 10 o'clock. Then I went back home and slept late the next day, woke up and it felt funny. So I went back to the hospital and they said, oops, one of the leads we put down into your heart is flapping around. So we need to go back in. I said, well, okay, I'm going to go get some dinner and I'll be back after that. And they said, no, you're going in right now. So they put me on a gurney, took me into the operating room an hour or two later and redid it so it would work. And that was back then, and I haven't had a problem since. I mean, seriously, not a problem since. No, excuse me, wasn't 2016. 2016 is when I got the new battery. 2009 is when that happened. Okay, so I've been running mountain trails and doing 100 push-ups a day ever since, and have never had a hiccup of a problem with it since 2009.
That's great. I want to throw some motivation questions at you. Eric's got a question he's on live right now, and he said,
yeah,
now that the majority of the workforce has moved to work at home atmosphere, how do you stay motivated and stay inside of structure versus getting distracted with kids, dishes, food, house stuff that needs to go on? What would your best advice be?
Well, the first thing you got to get clear in your mind that there's a difference between the part of your day that's work and the part of your day that's leisure or family, right? And you got to make a deal with the family. Hey, daddy or mom is at work, so leave me alone during this time. I won't take too long, but I've got to take this time and focus only on that, just like when I leave the house and go to the office. So make it as important to you and as respected by them as if you were outside the house in a formal office. Because if you don't, then it will atrophy. It'll denigrate into something too casual to be successful, truly successful. Another thing, if you're doing video chats, coaching calls, things like that, dress better. Don't put on a t-shirt and jeans. Dress like you would. Yeah, but I'm at home and they're at home. Yeah, I get that. I get that. But it's not the same as drinking beer around the pool. This is different. I mean, I was watching a church sermon the other day online, and the preacher had on a polo shirt, which perfectly understandable. He was doing it from home. But the feeling was different. Same guy, same message, same everything except dress. And that little factor, most people wouldn't know that that's what they noticed. But if you asked them, how did that differ from being in a pew at the church? They would say, it doesn't feel the same. Okay. One part of that is the way you come across, the way you present yourself. So if you're presenting virtually in your coaching calls, in your whatever you're doing, any kind of meetings, make sure the background is appropriate to the nature of the meeting. Make sure the way you're dressed is appropriate to your role and your position. Make sure your behavior is appropriate. Don't sit there and, pick your teeth while you're not talking, because everybody sees you as well as the other people. Last night I was watching the news, and Wolfgang Puck, the restaurateur, was one of the two guests, celebrity guests. And I noticed Wolfgang, during the moments he wasn't the focus, was looking at his computer and going like this. And it was very distracting. Now, if he'd been in the studio, that wouldn't have happened at all. So it wasn't the problem wasn't his capability, it was his thinking about the situation. If he had said, okay, self, I'm on camera. This is a studio, whether it feels like one or not. I need to remember I'm on camera, because everything I do, they will see. It's kind of like if you were at a head table in the old days in a meeting. When you're up there, your facial expressions are part of what's going on for every member in that audience. Even if you're not the speaker, if another person, let's say Dave Bush is speaking, and I'm Jim, I'm sitting there on the head table, and Dave says something, and I go, wait a minute, I've got a responsibility to support what he's doing. If I disagree with it, stay neutral, take my disagreement up directly, not communicating it to the entire audience that sees me out of the corner of their eye. So when you're on camera, you're on camera. There is no such thing as finding a place on stage where you can scratch.
I got another question for you, Jim. This one is more related to those people whose world has just been turned upside down. I mean, everybody's world at some level has been turned upside down.
You mean like mine? My business is asleep. Yeah.
But
I'm having to poke it every day to wake it up.
Many people that have been, put out of a job, and the idea of being motivated when you're in a state of survival, and there's a lot of unknown factors, there's a lot of fear. Talk a little bit more. You talked about habits, but talk about mindset and putting a person in a place where they can keep moving forward, even though things aren't necessarily organized and, designed the way that they want them to.
Well, I would say, first off, don't expect yourself to have the strength to always be at your best. Get tools. If a positive saying or a photograph or something like that helps you, put it where you'll see it often. If reading scripture or reading motivational works for a few minutes each morning or just before each meeting would be helpful to you, then do that. Get the works that you like. One thing that I did is I wrote a self-motivation handbook, which is coming out under a new title April 7th, The Power Minute, which you can get it on Amazon right now. But it's 336 one-minute ideas. Only takes 1 minute to read each one, on how to motivate yourself and others. And motivation is the ability to get yourself to do what needs to be done when you don't feel like it yet, right? And so this is 336 different ways that I've discovered over the years that anyone can stimulate action when action is not what you feel like.
Well,
So
the
things
idea
like that.
the idea of having a power minute that is something that kind of refocuses you. People oftentimes say, I don't feel very motivated. I'm not motivated to make healthier choices. I'm not motivated to go out there and,
Right.
call people or to go into my business and do work when I don't see a very bright future. But, you talk a little bit more about the idea of taking action on motives. I think it was Dennis Waitley who came up with that contraction. Talk a little bit more about not acting on your feelings, but just acting on your desired outcome and your habits.
Yeah, your motives are what you choose, the outcome you choose. Your reasons, your why, right? So if your why is clear, if you know what matters to you, then you'll be more likely to do what's important for you, right? If you know what matters to you, you'll be more likely to do what's important for you. For example, I'm never motivated to brush my teeth, but I am motivated to have good teeth and clean breath. So I brush my teeth, right? I'm never motivated to do exercise. I'm motivated to have the feeling that comes after the exercise. Boom, been there, done that, check it off the list. I love that moment, right? And I know then I can kind of relax for a little while because I've at least paid my physical dues to stay slender, stay fit, and be ready to meet the day. So know what matters to you. Get real clear on what matters. And I mean specifically, not just, well, family matters. Yeah, okay, what does that mean? And what does that mean? And what does that mean? Until you can't find a more specific answer, right? And then ask yourself, is my behavior compatible with the motives that I want? Because motivation is motive with action. Motive, action. A motive without action, a dream, a fantasy. Action without a motive, random behavior, meaningless behavior. Motive with action, that's motivation. That's something meaningful. That's something that can pay off. So ask yourself what matters and then start looking at your day. And I mean, look at from the moment your eyes open in the morning, even maybe before when you hear the alarm or you realize the room is filled with sunlight and it's probably time or past time to get up. Look at every action microscopically throughout your entire day, not all at once, but in pieces. And just ask yourself, how's that working for you? Is that leading to where you want to go? Because if it isn't, maybe a tiny little minor adjustment, like my morning routine is, if I can get my ankle past the edge of my bed, I'm committed to getting up. And I've made it important to me to never go back on that commitment. So when I'm laying there in bed and I don't feel like getting up, I want to sleep, and maybe just a few more moments. If I can get myself to just put my ankle over the edge of the bed, then I go ahead and get up. And that's my little agreement with myself. And self-discipline, people say, yeah, you got all this iron discipline. You're a motivated person. No, it didn't start like that. My wife, I swear to God, this is true. My wife, Paula, used to have to pull me to a sitting position in the mornings to get me out of bed. When I was fat and lethargic, in my 20s, for heaven's sakes, way too young to be that way. She would say, Jim, it's time to get up. No, come on, Jim. Seriously, it's getting late. She would come over and take my arms and pull me up to a sitting position. I'd go, okay. And then I'd finally get out of bed.
All this from the motivation expert that's written a book on how to use power minutes to take it to that next level. And I love the visual image on your book that you have tennis shoes, and maybe just tell that story and then we'll wrap up things.
Okay. Well, when I wanted to become fit, I needed an exercise I could commit to that would be my regular routine. And I was about 30 years old. And I said, jogging seems to be a good idea, running, because that was becoming more and more popular at the time. This was at the beginning of the era when all that happened back in 1976. And so I said, all right, I'll start jogging. And all of my friends who were not fit, key portion of that statement, friends who were not fit were telling me, no, you shouldn't jog. It's not good for your knees, your ankles. You can't run on concrete or pavement. You know, you need, all of these people were not fit. Now, the people who were runners, they had a decent set of shoes, which changes pavement to the same as running barefoot on grass, right? They never complained about their knees and ankles, and they didn't seem to be the slightest bit concerned that they were going to wear out their body parts by running. We're naturally designed to walk and run. The less we use those natural abilities, the more they tend to atrophy, and the longer the journey to get back to fitness. But I didn't really get fit until age 62. So I went a long time with just being moderately fit. Okay. It took me a while to get back to the point where the pain went away, where the problems like plantar fasciitis or, ankle pain or back pain or whatever no longer was an issue. But you know what I'm going to do after this video? I'm going to do 100 push-ups. I'm going to drop down on the ground, do about 60 or 70 nonstop, go back on my knees, catch my breath, and do the rest of them to check off 100 push-ups for the day. This morning I got up early, and at sunrise I went for a 3.5-mile walk, fast walk on pavement because it's been kind of rainy around here lately and I didn't want the mud. Friday, I'm going to be on the mountain trails going about 6 miles. Do I want to do that? No, but I want the effect of having done it. And I've gotten to where I really enjoy the process now. I just don't like the starting points. So take the time to symbolically for me, it was put on my running shoes and step out the door. If I could get myself to do that, it was like the ankle off the bed. That would be the olive out of the bottle that caused the rest of them to flow out. And so I put on every day my running shoes, even on days when it was tremendously inconvenient. And I'd step out the door, and on those days, I'd step back in and take off the running shoes and do whatever I needed to do. But on most days, I would stay out there long enough to go for a walk or a jog or a run. And before long, I was able to run 5 miles nonstop, and then even longer. So just put on your running shoes. Someone says, well, I can't because, hey, just put on the shoes. You don't have to run. Just put on the shoes and step outside. Yeah, I don't have time. Do it. Okay, now take them off if you want to. Well, I'm out here. I might as well, go to the corner. Heck, I can go on to the shopping center. Hey, guys, I'll be back in a little while, right? Next thing you know, you've had a good workout.
Yeah, the idea about just opening up the book and reading the Power Minute, that's sometimes the hardest part of just taking the minute, is just opening up the book. But I'd encourage you guys, get a copy of the Power Minute. Get a copy to not only for yourself, get a copy to maybe give out to your team. It's on Amazon. If you want more resources, Cathcart.com is a great resource to get more information.
And the way to use the book, it's not written to where it's required to be linear. Just have the book in your way somewhere, someplace inconvenient so that it's in your face. And every time you look at it and have a moment, just pick it up and read the first 2 words of one of the things on any page. When I'm talking with people at a convention and they say, hey, tell me about your book. And I say, well, here's a copy of it. You really ought to look at number 129. I don't know what 129 is. I just pull a number out of the air. And so they go around, they flip through and they find, 129, and then they look at another one, number 26, number 155, number 216. each one's only 1 minute long. And if you'll read the first 2 words of number 218, I guarantee you're going to read the whole minute.
Yeah, great stuff, Jim. Thanks so much for being with us today. And let me just remind all of you is that regardless of whether you're employed or your business is not performing the way that you want, investing in yourself, not investing in the stock market right now, but maybe investing in yourself to improve the asset that you have, which is you, or, taking the opportunity to invest in the relationships. Jim's taught me a lot about, relationship intelligence and investing into your relationships, whether it be your family, time with your kids, time with your grandkids right now, but take the time to invest in relationships and invest in yourself, and you will not be disappointed with the return on investment that you reap. So thanks, Jim. Thanks so much for your time. We appreciate your wisdom, and we wish you all the very best. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.